Joppa. I feel way better today, but man, I was sick Sunday. I was sick at the dog yesterday, and excuse me if I like sneeze or need to blow my nose. Um, but I really want to welcome you to the 1v1 podcast. It's really an honor and a privilege to have you on and to talk Pantheon Rise of the Fallen with you, and just basically have a discussion. You know, like I've been an MMO player for the past 20 years, but my experience has mainly come from World of Warcraft. So with a lot of the older games, right? The only old MMO that I had experience with prior to World of Warcraft was Final Fantasy 11.
Hmm.
And Final Fantasy 11 was a huge wake up call for me in terms of like, you know, grouping with other people, can't really solo by yourself. The world was extremely punishing. There was XP loss. You can de-level. A lot of these really punishing mechanics, and that was very common, you know, without the theme in the early 2000s, late 90s, you know, kind of thing. And I never ever played EverQuest, so that was something that I never got into. I don't have a nostalgic feeling towards that game, nor have I know any of the systems that come from EverQuest. So Pantheon is supposed to be like a predecessor, correct? Or like kind of like an evolution of EverQuest. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. We think of it like a spiritual successor, and yes,
Okay.
an evolution, and also a bit of a fusion. But a spiritual successor to EverQuest is probably the simplest way to put it. Yeah.
Okay. And so I guess because there's been this huge, I would say, kind of outpouring from the MMO community at large for this kind of older style, choices mattering, very slowed down gameplay when it comes to like, you know, the journey mattering. You know, you're not going to level from one to max in a single day. What do you feel are like the strong points in your opinion when it comes to Pantheon and what it brings to the table in the current 2026 climate of MMOs?
Yeah. Great question. I'm going to try not to be long-winded. The people that watch me more regularly, they would say I'm never long-winded ever. So shouldn't be a problem. But if you want to like jump in and like cut me off and, hey, let's chat about that, please, you're not going to mess me up by jumping in. Also, real quick, did you send a link to Dual Stream or Dual whatever? Because if you did, I didn't see it. I didn't know what you wanted to do on Twitch.
No, I did, but I decided not to. I just added you on mine.
Got it.
Because it was just my camera wasn't working on there.
Got it.
You have to set it up. Yeah, so don't worry about it. It's fine.
Yeah,
you're fine.
Okay, so to the question. Great question. And I think before I really answer that, and specifically in relation to Pantheon, it really has to do with we've been in a post-WoW era for a really long time, you know, a couple decades now and running. And what we found with World of Warcraft is it had such a successful model that ended up becoming embraced by just about every, you know, MMO to one degree or another. And really, I would say on the whole, very heavily influenced by the progression systems of World of Warcraft, the, you know, convenience, the accessibility. But more than anything else, I feel like a very, and this is going to sound negative, I don't really mean it negative necessarily, but it's a very on rails kind of experience where you, from the very beginning, you're introduced to, you know, a quest hub of sorts where you get used to kind of gathering up quests, going out, you know, being directed exactly where to go to do those quests. You do what you need to do. You come back, you turn them in, you level up, you get gear. And it's kind of this extension ladder approach where, you know, you're constantly being kind of notched up into that next rung of power, and it's guiding you through the world. You know, you don't really have to wonder, where do I go next? It's always kind of showing you. And when WoW came out, you know, because before that you had EverQuest, you had, you know, Asheron's Call, Ultima, you had all these games, that were so open-ended. I think WoW came out and was really fresh in that sense, right? Where it was nice, like kind of being told where to go, what to do. You know, you kind of had, that was what was fresh at that point. Not to mention the polish and, you know, a lot of the other things that made it my second favorite MMO of all time. Just keep that in mind as we're talking about it. I am a fan of WoW. But I think now here in 2026, what I find a lot is we've been through that so many times Like we have experienced that so many times that Pantheon is kind of banking on this idea that what made the MMORPG genre great in the first place was being able to go into and inhabit a world that was immersive and that actually kind of created a sense of adventure, a sense of like, I want to go out into the world and discover something. I want to feel like I'm exploring and engaging in this kind of like unbridled, unknown, unsolved world where one of the ways I've described it is it's like going on an Easter egg hunt where no matter how many eggs that you have lying around, if everybody knows there are 20 golden eggs, which eggs are you going to be really looking for and caring about? What modern MMOs do is they put this kind of through line of progression in front of you where if you don't have a quest for it, why do you care about it? If you see something interesting in the distance, but you don't have a quest for it, you know, are you going to go and check it out? Maybe, but it's kind of built on this premise that people aren't playing MMORPGs to be immersed anymore. They're playing MMORPGs to kind of walk this line, you know, to some form of like a game mode that they're interested in playing. And I'm being general. I don't mean to like, you know, apply this to everything because I know that there are some exceptions or at least some slices of exception. But Pantheon, I think, is, you know, any game is a risk. Anytime you make a game, it's a risk. And we're not, we're not, you know, we don't have these visions of grandeur where we're expecting to, you know, draw the masses. You know, this is not about creating a WoW killer or anything like that. But it's a risk taken on the idea that if we can start getting back to the roots of what made MMORPGs the genre that they are today, the depth, the immersion, the sense of like, I want to be in a shared world with other people where I'm not necessarily kind of following that golden path. I'm just inhabiting the world and you know, dealing with not knowing where I'm going, dealing with, you know, kind of these interactions with other players that are, I don't know, just deeper and not just kind of, you know, everybody's on their own little through path and you're queuing up for this game mode and you're then, you know, jumping over here to this game mode, but you're not really inhabiting a world. So I could go on, I could wax on like this for a long time, but
yeah,
I'll stop there.
I think with WoW, right, like when Classic or Vanilla came out, there was no add-ons for it, right? So it's like a lot of people, every time that they were confused or there was any kind of confusion present, you know, people would ask like in trade chat or in global to be like, hey, I'm stuck on this quest. And then you would have like these human interactions with people, be like, oh, I just found out where that guy is. Or, oh, I know where you need to go. And there was like a community that was built, you know, on that. But then, of course, as WoW progressed, right, people started to develop add-ons. People started to develop certain things that would help players out and basically removing the friction that the game presented. And now in 2026, no matter what friction you put as a developer, there's people like myself, content creators. There's web designers that are going to make websites like with Ashes, right? We had Ashes Codex. And that was something that, you know, Steven and the team did not want. And there was a lot of things that I think developers want to have in isolation, but I don't think that's ever really going to happen because there's always going to be a YouTube guide or a website to go from quest to quest or from where to go. And I feel like that's always the kind of challenge that I think is presented now in 2026 with the readability of the internet, right, at our fingertips, literally, comparatively to like the late 1990s or, you know, the early 2000s when the internet was very much like an infant. Now it's almost like a toddler, you know, like maybe going into teenage years. So it's like, how do you develop a game where you want to have that sense of adventure that can get easily removed by just watching a YouTube video?
Great question. We've actually been asked, and you didn't. Yeah, we've been asked this a lot. I've answered this question a lot, and it's one of my favorite ones to answer because it is one of the things that really differentiates Pantheon. So, have you ever played Guild Wars 2?
I have.
Okay. Maybe you can help me with this. In Divinity's Reach, there is a section of the city where if you go into it and you look up, there are like these, they're like brass kind of constellations up in the ceiling. And there's kind of this network of like planets and like different cool looking things. I remember, I don't remember what that's called or anything like that, but I remember being in Guild Wars 2 back in like 2013. This was before I was even working on Pantheon. And I went into that area, I saw that, and I was like, this is really cool. This is amazing. And what I was saying before is, what struck me is I didn't have a quest for it. I kind of happened to be in Divinity's Reach I was looking for something else, saw it, was really struck by it, but didn't have a quest for it, so I moved on. And it was kind of the seed of like, what would it be like in an MMO? And I remember just kind of like dwelling and daydreaming on this for a while, and ended up bringing it into Pantheon. What would happen if an MMO, by right of like, instead of you getting a quest first and then being told where to go and what to do, you're in the world, and as you're seeing things that catch your interest, you're going to them, you're by right of like being in the presence of them, whether it's a statue, whether it's something like I described, whether it's finding an NPC along the way, or, you know, something tucked under a rock or whatever it may be, that the environment itself is kind of acting as the dungeon master, storyteller, quest giver. That's the beginning of it. And then what I want to answer your question with is the way that we're building our system in Pantheon is it's a system based on a very deep layer of like flagging. So what that means is, as I start a new character and I run around the world and I'm interacting with NPCs and I'm killing NPCs and I'm looting things and I'm completing certain quests and I'm, you know, going to this waterfall that looks interesting, I may not be having, like, something may not be happening in that moment. But what's happening is under the hood, my character is actually being flagged with all of these various different things that may or may not result in something happening down the road, whether it's, you know, an extra NPC dialogue option, whether it's, you know, some kind of extra quest that's not available to me. And you may not necessarily know how you got from point A to point M. So one of the ways that this is naturally kind of protected a little bit, I'm not saying that it won't, you know, ultimately ever be fully solved, but the system in and of itself is designed to kind of be protected a little bit from what you would think of as like a typical quest guide. Because with a lot of these kind of quests, there will be some quests that are like that, more traditional, but there will be many that are based on your dialogue options, and you won't necessarily be able to redo those. Sometimes you will. But then you also won't necessarily be aware that because you went and, you know, slayed this enemy and you got this particular faction, you know, gain, that in 10 or 15 levels later, when you're on another side of the world, there's actually some kind of a connection point there. And that obfuscation is already, it's intended in some ways to kind of create a more immersive experience.
So, like, when it comes to, I'm going to read what they, so like, I think when I see players, or even just, I think it's a very unique and probably less than like 5% of players would actually read the quests. And I guess like for you developing, like, because every game is kind of different, right? Like, you know, like if you're going to play Final Fantasy 14, if you're not playing it for the story, like, you're in for a rough time. It's very story centric. So are what you saying about Pantheon is, if you're not interested in questing and have the more dynamic approach, you're probably not going to like Pantheon? Or...
No, not at all. Because I'm not even talking about quests necessarily. These are, like I said, this
just
could
the
be
adventuring experience. I want to make sure I'm clear, because I don't want to feel like I'm confused.
Yeah. No. I'm glad you're clarifying. Sometimes it can be related to quests. Sometimes, but the goal is not to give players a ton of things to read. The goal is much more of a dynamic experience. I don't know if you've played Pantheon enough to see some of the, like, we call them perception pings. These little kind of like windows that appear at the top of the screen. You get like a little audio cue. They're very terse kind of messages. They're meant to be something more like a dungeon master in a D&D campaign would kind of say to you. They're not allowed to read. It's very, you know, they're one sentence, maybe two, but they're meant to give you enough to kind of put the pieces together of what the next step may be. Sometimes it could be in the form of, you know, like I was saying, you know, an extra dialogue option in dialogue that, again, is not necessarily this big, long, drawn-out thing to read. Sometimes it's, you know, triggering a spawn. Sometimes it's, we have lots of different levers and knobs that we can use. So no, I'm not saying that you need to love, you know, reading lore and sitting through these long, tomes of reading. It's more the idea that as you're moving around the world, like, you might be given access to an area, you might be able to interpret, something that's happening based on something that a way that you've been flagged before that moment. And so it can take lots of different shapes. I'm not a big quester either, surprisingly. In the traditional sense, I'm absolutely the guy that will click accept and just get something done and click complete and get the experience and move on. But what I do want more of, going to the example of something like in, I know you never played EQ, but imagine you're sitting around in some of these games that you have played and you notice like a really interesting piece of artwork on the wall or a suit of armor in the corner or something in the environment that catches your interest. Even just being able to go over to it, interact with it, and get some lore, about what it is or what the crest means, or, think back to things like Resident Evil or, these games where you learn how to interact with the environment, even just to get a little sense of things. But then there are times when it's much more dynamic than that. There are times when it's connected to something much bigger, more of an overarching story. We're building it in a way where if that even what I said doesn't interest you at all, like that's, we should, when we talk about the other aspects of Pantheon that I think are important that people probably overlook because we are classically spirited. I think there's, plenty here for people who are not as interested in that stuff, but for people that are interested in like an immersive experience, having NPCs respond to you differently, how they emote to you, what they say to you, being aware that you've gone and done this thing, or if you've had that conversation with the hermit, in the middle of nowhere, then that one villager that, flags you, like kind of calls you over and is like, hey, like, whispers are on the wind that you've, met this person. Like that kind of stuff's cool to me because it's again, it's not anything that you're expecting, but it is a product of like what you're doing in the world. And that's what we're trying to create.
Okay. Well, because I was following Ashes of Creation, right? There was always like Ashes and Pantheon kind of being developed, in my opinion, almost like side by side kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And you guys have been in development for 9 years or 8 years?
A little longer than that. It's been, I think, 12 years or close.
Okay.
Long time.
But I mean, y'all had some, what was like the lead guy for EverQuest ended up passing away. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean that was a huge blow. And then you guys don't have like 30 developers from what I heard. Is that true? I don't want to like
a little bit less. We've got
a little bit less.
20, I think 22 or 23 that are on the actual like development team, people doing the work on the game. We've got a larger team outside of that, just in, other departments and whatnot. But yeah.
No, for sure. Team. And so, yeah, I mean, and again, to make even a basic MMO, it takes a long time. I think people underestimate just how complex of a game an MMORPG is to make, and especially if you're trying to do, certain things that other games haven't done, or things that you want to improve upon what other games have done, right? So it's like with EverQuest seems to be like a sandbox, more like a sandbox kind of game than more of a theme park, correct? And I think a lot of the older MMOs were very sandboxy in nature. So I think that's why I think World of Warcraft sort of like almost paved its own road with like its theme park approach, because I don't know, did we coin the phrase theme park from World of Warcraft? I mean, as an MMORPG player, like I feel like we did, because it's like I don't remember hearing that term until WoW sort of like paved that way.
Yeah, I think that might be the case.
And so with Pantheon being like a sandbox game, do you feel like, especially now in 2026, that there's like room for a game like Pantheon? And especially now with like, because I think so personally, like I think right now the MMO genre is very much like an ancient species. Like it's almost like an endangered species at this point. We have very little of them that are thriving. The rest are either dying or dead, and we need more, So I've never wished for MMORPGs to fail, but then we had, as of recently, New World, Amazon Game Studios completely shutting down killing not just New World, but then there was like the Lord of the Rings MMO that they were working on, completely gone. And then of course Intrepid, gone. Ash is gone. Um, so like, how do you feel like the genre is currently? And like, what do you think Pantheon is going to do like once it actually comes out to like penetrate the market?
I mean, I think part of that is having like a differentiating angle. And that's kind of what I was getting at
Oh,
earlier, that
absolutely.
there's so many games
Yeah.
that,
Or WoW clones, basically.
yeah. And so I think that's a big part of it. And I think Pantheon does that. I think Pantheon, so Pantheon is meant to be kind of a way I've described it is, if you go back to the height of the EverQuest trilogy, so this is basically during Velius, the third expansion of the game, which is kind of thought of as, in some ways kind of the pinnacle of what EverQuest was. The expansion following Velius, Shadows of Luckland, it was just a huge, there were a lot of major changes that started to take the game in a direction that a lot of people started to fall in love with it. And then if you also take World of Warcraft, when it first launched, like classic vanilla World of Warcraft, with a lot of its polish,
Yeah.
a lot of its accessibility, and the depth of combat, a little bit of a faster paced. We're looking to create kind of a fusion between those two things. Like if we could go back to that moment in time and hold true to some of the things that EQ did with its social emphasis, non-instance gameplay, like shared contested world, that sense of challenge that is married to things like particularly very polarizing things like death penalties and stuff like that, where playing EQ was just a very different experience. We want to go back and say there's a third way, there's a third path. Like this could have gone in a little bit of a different direction, where it stayed a little bit truer to EverQuest, a little bit truer to these classic MMOs, but still embraced a lot of what WoW brought to the table to make it so much more palatable for like a more of a modern taste. And
Yeah.
I absolutely think there is a place for that. And I think some of these differentiators that we have a full form climbing system. We have which is not just like you can climb in these special designated areas, but like you can literally climb anything. You can climb anything anywhere. We have, plans for like some pretty cool like underwater plans. We've got the perception system that I talked about. We have a couple of other like combat related systems with mastery that's coming online in the spring. Special dispositions where NPCs can spawn with all kinds of different, not just like traits, but like behavioral like quirks and dynamics. Just to kind of keep areas fresh. And then it's a game that like, it's a game predicated on, we're not going to hold your hand quite as much. Things like death are meant to be scary, not just, like, oh, let me, like that happened, but like you are actively trying to avoid death. There are places where you go in the game where you feel fear. You feel that sense of like I don't know, like I would sometimes I think like, how long has it been for a lot of people when they played an MMO where they've actually felt something like that, like felt something. And I ask myself, like, we play these games and we're all here watching or listening or just generally aware because we play MMOs and we like MMOs, but are we really feeling them anymore? And that's a lot of what we've been exploring with Pantheon, is like, how do we actually invoke feeling, emotion, a sense of like place, where you're playing a game but you're there and you're feeling the weight of like your decisions and your trepidations and various things. So I think those things to me are why I think there's room for Pantheon right now. And I think there's a whole demographic of people that I think would have loved to experience some of these classic games, and they just weren't alive. Because you go back and you try to play them now, and they're really clunky, they're really janky. Like people kind of bounce off of them. And that's one of the reasons why we've embraced a lot of polish and accessibility for Pantheon, and because we want to like remove as many barriers of entry as we can for people to actually experience this kind of game.
Yeah. My buddy Roar just told you, Joppa. He says, "Thanks for talking to this dude, Joppa. He is a casual and never played EQ, but I believe in you."
I played EQ maybe too much, too much.
Yeah. Well, and coming from someone who's never played a lot of the older MMOs, right? Like, I think especially like when I was in Ashes and in that community for a long time, I saw that through demographics of like my YouTube videos and just talking to the people in the community, like the MMO crowd is like 35 plus. Like there isn't a lot of youngins that play MMOs. Like even World of Warcraft, like World of Warcraft is still a like an old man's game. Like, I'm going to be 40 this year. And, like mostly my analytics for YouTube is like 35 plus. I have another buddy of mine who creates YouTube content for WoW, and it's pretty much the same. So I think when it comes to, especially the old school stuff, and right now, I think there's like this almost like this disdain with how the current MMO lineup is, like whether it's like Guild Wars 2, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14, ESO, BDO, people are looking for like this older style of gameplay. You think of the solo dev developer that made Dread Mists. You think of like Pantheon. You think of Project Gorgon. You think of like all these MMOs that people like have been playing. That is like a very reminiscent time of like of old, right? Like thinking of like their Ultima Online days, their EverQuest days, their Asheron's Call days, and I don't know like if we're ever going to get into a younger demographic. I don't like as much as I want to, as much as I want the genre to succeed. I think because like me and Roar were talking about this about WoW and how WoW has been like almost like abandoned its current audience completely. Like it's the original audience that's been there to then cater to this younger audience, this kind of Disney Pixar-ish like 15
crazy.
on up, And yeah, it is crazy. It feels weird, you know what I mean? But and this is what I've always said about WoW is like I feel like I'm in high school, but I'm 30. I should be here. Like I feel like I'm too old to be here now, And I still play WoW when it comes to like dungeons and the raids. I think the dungeons and raids has always been WoW's bread and butter. And that was actually something that I remember the old school like OG creators of World of Warcraft, because they used to play EverQuest and they loved the shit out of it. But of course there were things that they didn't like. You know what I mean? They didn't like the XP loss. They didn't like the deleveling. They didn't like how the raids were or whatever, right? There was a lot of things that they always thought of like, man, wouldn't it be cool if like we made our own MMO and it had this instead of that and this instead of that. And I think that's really how WoW was born, just off of their passion for EverQuest, but wanted to go in a different direction. And with Pantheon, like what is Pantheon doing to not just replicate the EverQuest design, but to improve upon it, to more like evolved 2.0 version of that system?
Well, one thing that's important to reiterate is, if whether we're talking about a younger demographic or, someone in the core audience, like to go back and try to play EverQuest for the first time, if you didn't grow up with it.
Right.
And I would say the same about, old school RuneScape. I'd say the same about Ultima, like any of these games
definitely.
that still exist. There are people that fire it up and play it fresh and love the crap out of it because they played it a long time when they were younger. Anybody trying to do that today who didn't, they're gonna be like, I mean, I love old school MMOs. I tried to play old school RuneScape not that long ago, and I was like, I can't. Like, I don't, because I have no affinity for it.
Right.
So in that sense, we are taking great care. One of the things that Pantheon it's funny to hear because people will play Pantheon for the first time and they'll come in with their expectations and whatever, and they'll play it and be like, this is like really smooth. Like it runs well. The character controller is really smooth. Like feels a lot like playing World of Warcraft in terms of the responsiveness and there's even more improvements we want to make there. We want the game to be buttery smooth and responsive. We want combat to have a lot of snap and a lot of depth. We want there to be a lot of like tactical stuff going on in group gameplay, which I hope I'm not sure if you're planning on continuing to play at all, but I hope that you get the chance to experience like some group play, because that's one of the places where Pantheon really comes to life, is in the challenge and kind of the tactical nature of group combat. But those things and those kind of updates are part of kind of cutting through a lot of what makes people glance off. Now repeat the question, because I lost my train of thought there for a second.
Well, so I was just basically asking, like, what is Pantheon doing to
improve on
the original
yes.
EverQuest?
There it is.
Yeah, to make it almost like a 2.0 version.
Yeah.
Because I think, any person who loves MMOs, right, that's want to create they're trying to create this like this updated version of like this, whether it's like a Frankenstein taking parts of this MMO, parts of that MMO, and putting them all together, or whether it's just like, hey, I really love, kind of like Ashes, which was basically its predecessor was Arcage. Like everything that was in Arcage, that's what Steven was pulling from. And so when it comes to EverQuest, like, I'm sure there's a lot of inspiration y'all are pulling from it, but what are y'all doing to like make it feel new, but also make it feel like there's like this evolution towards it, whether it's like adding like talent trees to classes, or I don't know if the original EverQuest had talent trees, but stuff like that, right? Just making improvements where there wasn't that because they just didn't think of it, or maybe they just didn't focus on it, or whatever the case is.
Yeah, there's a lot of different answers you can give to this. I mean, some more granular than others. On a granular level, which I think MMO players would appreciate, is EverQuest. The way that they designed their classes, you had like a cleric healer in EverQuest was really the only healer that could heal well. There were two other healers, but they were much weaker in their healing in comparison, and they really couldn't hold up, in raid scenarios and in, more difficult group scenarios. Clerics were also the only class that could resurrect and restore experience that was lost. And so one of the granular answers is, we're making sure that all of our healers, for example, are designed and intended to kind of be able to do the same content, just as well as the other, just in different ways, very different play styles. So that's right. A granular answer. A more kind of like broader answer, aside from like some of the polish and accessibility stuff and whatnot, is we're looking at like death penalty, for example. Like we do have a death penalty in Pantheon, but it's much less severe than EverQuest was. So in Pantheon, if you die, you lose experience. You leave a corpse. In EverQuest, it was called the naked corpse run, because you would die, you would lose experience, and you would respawn wherever you were bound, which could be literally like a world away, and you were naked. Like you had no gear, you had nothing in your inventory. Like all of it was literally left on your corpse. It was crazy, and it was
that sounds crazy.
Very memorable, but it was insanely intense and
punishing.
Yeah, super punishing. And a lot of people that would play that today or experience that today would be like, a lot of people who play Pantheon even and see that it has a death penalty, they're like, I don't know. But we've changed a little bit where when you die in Pantheon, you respawn with all of your equipped gear. You don't leave your equipped gear on your corpse, so you have a way to actually, get back to where you died. But you do still need to get back to get your inventory and your coin, which is still, with experience loss, that's still like, whoa, that's a. But like I said,
and you can de-level in Pantheon.
You can.
Can't you?
You can. Yes, you can. So I'll put it this way.
That was my quit point in Final Fantasy 11.
Yeah, please.
I quit because I was in a group and I was level 30 as a pugilist, and I de-leveled in that group from 30 to 26, and then I never played Final Fantasy 11 again. I was done. Yeah. I was like, no, this is stupid. Because each level was insane to go, and I de-leveled 4 times. So I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
That's just, I can't do it.
That's kind of what for what it's worth, I don't know that I've ever heard of anybody de-leveling that much in EQ. I'm not sure how it was then, in that game you're talking about. I did know of a monk in EQ that de-leveled on a PvP server. They found his bind point and killed him enough times to de-level him from 55 to 50, which, if you've played EQ, anyone listening, how, that's insane. That's insane. But anyway,
yeah.
The point I want to make is this, like, take Ashes, for example. Anytime that you're making an MMO and you're trying to cut against the cloth, you're trying to like do something different, new, evolved, fresh, whatever it may be, you have to have a vision and stick to it, because what you're doing differently, even if it's unpopular, really matters. And Ash is one of the things I feel like that would have made Ashes a lot more popular, for example, even more than it already was, is if they had done something a little different with their PvP. But it was Stevens, and I think, you know, generally the team's kind of conviction that like they wanted this kind of PvP embedded experience where it really was kind of woven throughout. And for a lot of people, that's kind of a deal breaker. Like, I don't want to get, you know, messed with when I'm trying to PvE. In a similar way with Pantheon, like, we're embracing some of these things that some people look at and say like, I don't know, you know, I don't know if I can handle that. And yet it is the thing that makes it different. And the sum of all those parts and the experience that it creates really is important. And one of the things that's been interesting for me and our team in general is like navigating this balance between, you know, obviously we want Pantheon to be a success. We want as many people to play it as possibly would or could. But you have to fight against that temptation to like blunt all of the edges, you know, because at the end of the day, and like I was saying at the very beginning, we've been down this MMORPG road so many times, and it seems like every single time one launches, we get excited about it. It's a new game. There's like this electricity, like, oh, I'm digging this. And then it's like inevitably in a day or two or a week or two, it's like, I've done this. Like, I've had these exact experiences. I've felt this exact same way. I'm leveling, I'm gearing, I'm like, and it's just the same. And so
like procedural by the numbers, it's just predictable, boring.
Yep.
Completely get it. I think there's a comfort in some people when it comes to, like, you know, here I am with the blanket on me, but I mean, there's like a comfort when it comes to knowing, like, expecting the unexpected. Like, I'm expecting there to be like quests, things, and it's like this very easy going, very like kind of just stringing you along, you know, getting you in the game. And I guess like for me, and this was something like I heard you talking about, because I actually watched your stream to get the pretext before you came and watched my video, or watched my stream about me kind of like flailing and drowning in my own PlayStation. And basically just, you know, because again, I think I'm used to being very guided, you know, when it comes to an MMO experience. And when, you know, I've been playing a lot of games recently. I was playing Arcade Classic, which Arcade Classic actually had a pretty guided system. But then I played Pantheon, which wasn't really guided. I played Project Gorgon, which was not very guided. Played Quinfall, which, you know, had a pretty guided experience. But they're all different philosophies, different MMOs, different types for different people, you know, whatever the case is. But I guess my whole thing when it comes to guiding is I just think it's not good to make a person confused in the first 5 minutes of the game. Like, I understand when it comes to holding certain principles or design philosophies, you know, later, but in any game, the first thing to do to a gamer is to entice them and to lure them with good systems and good design. And it's not saying that, oh, we're purposefully missing this design because, well, every other game has it and we're trying to be different. Like, I get that. But having that confusion or that thing of like, what do I do? Like, where am I going? Like, should I be doing this? Am I doing it right or wrong? Or, you know, it's stuff like that where because I think people that aren't already knowing, right? Like the people that don't know Pantheon, hasn't watched a single live stream, doesn't really know the game too well, will go into like either like an early access or even at the launch, you know, and that's the last thing I want anyone to feel in an MMO. But I understand that if you want to give that up later on, now that there are enticed, maybe there is some investment there. Because really for a new player, there really isn't any investment in the first 5 minutes for them. They're trying to find a way to quit the game. And so I think it's always the job of the developer to get that out of their mind. Like, oh, look at our fun combat. Look how smooth it is to move around. Look how, you know, easy it is to like do this or do that or whatever. But you're going to run into friction and there's danger out there, you know, like, and maybe I'm naive in that. Like maybe I am wrong, but that's just something I've believed because I think there are games that are very heavy-handed within the first 5 minutes. And that's fine. But I just think, especially because of how much of a relic MMOs are, like, can we still pull that off? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's my worry is like, can we still do it?
Yeah. I don't know. The good news is we're not going to try to do that. We do have
Okay, good.
we do have a lot more planned, to kind of improve that
And
experience.
I did hear you talk about the
Yeah.
spring update, which makes me really excited because
Yeah.
I did hear everything you said, and I agree with you with what you said during your stream about like we are going to provide certain things of like people like not the exclamation points, but we are going to have like little NPCs say like, hey, adventurer, come over here, like more natural things in the game, which is great. Any kind of direction like that I think is really important. But it's like one person said right now, it's like I'd rather not have my hand filled. I can use my brain. Like I get that, I totally do. But there's some people who do want their hand held, and I think this is where I believe in the first minute you log into the game, there should be a box that says, "Would you like tutorials?" And if you're an experienced player, you don't want your hand held, you just hit no, and now boom, you figured everything out yourself. But I don't understand this whole mentality of, well, I don't want tutorials and I don't want to hold my hands, but I don't want you to hold anyone else's hand either. Like who is anyone to make that recommendation? Like if you don't want to do it, cool, you turn it off yourself. But if other people need it, let them use it. You know what I'm saying? Like that's my philosophy. Like I'd rather just have as many people experience and enjoy really designed, well-designed systems than to literally trip at the 1 yard line and oh my God, you were literally about to experience that system that was really, really good and you didn't play for 5 more seconds. You know what I mean? Like it's that kind of thing that I think a lot of developers do sometimes.
Oh yeah. Well, the good news is some of what you experienced, and I remember watching I think enough of your stream to kind of get a good sense of what you were struggling with and kind of some of the feelings that you were having. The good news is part of what you experienced is a product of just, we're still in development. And I know that sounds crazy because we've been at this a long time, but a lot of things are slow cooked and a lot of things, tweak and are iterated on, and kind of what we have and what we're going to be doing over the course of this year, and we're going to get more and more kind of focused and centered on it, is that new player experience. Because I agree with you completely. Like the first 10 minutes of a game is in some ways the most important. And what I know is when we launched EA in December of 2004, we had a
December of 2024?
Yes. Sorry, 24.
Okay.
2024. Sorry.
You said 04.
When
I
we
was
launched
like, wait,
EA,
what?
22 years ago. No, sorry. When we launched EA in 2024, December 2024, there was a massive influx of, it totally blew our expectations. And one of the things that we heard most consistently is we heard about a map, like there's no map.
Very true.
And we heard a very similar sentiment, like it. And what was interesting is the people that made it through that kind of initial wall, kind of fell in love with what was there. And as they kind of started understanding and a little bit of a sense of like, oh, okay, like this is kind of how you do it. Then it was like they were off. Like, okay, I love this. What we need to do kind of, and it's all part of that catching a lightning in a bottle, is like we need to find the right amount. And some of this is just like if you have played a Dire Lord, for example, the Dire Lord starting experience as of right now is more fleshed out than the Monk starting experience. You would have had a very different experience had you played the Dire Lord, because there is more of that, like, there are cultists right outside that, I want you to like rip their throats out and come back and, prove that you can handle this dire, inside
I'll try
of you.
it tonight.
There's things like that. And that is going to continue to be improved. So the Pantheon, the 1.0 Pantheon, is going to have those very immersive kind of starting experiences that are designed not only to kind of give you a lay of the land and give you a sense of, how this game is meant to be approached, but it's also really important for immersion. It's really important for like, who am I in this world? Like, what is my class? What, how am I seen and viewed? What relationship to the area do I have? That, I think, in light of what we have planned versus where we are right now, that's one of the biggest weak points of Pantheon is the kind of that new player experience and kind of how the world imprints itself on you right now, which is a big goal that we have this year to improve.
Yeah. I think the one thing that, you know, especially coming from Ashes of Creation, like I told the developers right off rip, I was like, the first quest needs to involve combat of some kind, because if you, everyone's always like, especially a developer, always mentioning combat, they're mentioning, you know, the movement and like how snappy everything is. And, you know, you have to showcase that super early to be like, wow, like even the first ability of a class needs to feel like impactful, it needs to feel meaty, it needs to feel good to hit. And then you just can't even wait to hit level 2 to see like what new ability I can get. Like, how is this going to be complemented with more, you know? And there's a lot of games out there like you're like level 5 and you still haven't hit a single combat button. You know what I'm saying? And so like I think with the design of any developer like needs to put combat in the forefront, you know, especially because they're doing so much iteration. I mean, heck, Ash has probably had like 33 versions of iterations of combat at this point before it went down. And you know, so like that's like my thing. And I didn't mind the combat in Pantheon, honestly. I didn't really care too much for the Necro. The Necro to me was a little weird to play from a first time perspective. But I really love the monk. I was like, the monk is interesting. I like the fluidity of the monk. I always love melee classes and stuff like that. But I'll try the Dial Lord too. If it's a better experience, I'll see what that's like to see if you know, I can give you any like
I'd be really
my
curious
feedback
to see what you think about that, because it's got definitely more of kind of what we're discussing here, and I'm curious how Pantheon would imprint on you with more of kind of the intended experience starting out. It'd be cool. Be cool to hear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, honestly, Joppa, like, dude, I mean, with Ashes gone, like, there's a whole community of people currently wanting to belong to another community and feel passionate for an MMO. And I think with Ashes, the one thing I learned really quickly is that there's a lot of people that are really wanting an old school kind of game. Mm-hmm. And I think there is a really big opportunity, you know, especially with the spring update, to like get those people. And you know, with the spring update, I'm curious, is it going to have the mini map? Is it going to have like those improvements that you talked about with the like the Fatui system and like onboarding people? Is it going to have, like, is the spring update going to have any of that stuff?
It will have some of it. So we don't plan to have a mini map. We plan to have a zone,
like a map.
Yeah, a map.
Yeah, a zone map. Yeah. I don't mind having a compass, but as long as you have a map that I can see my character, like, or my dot in, and no points of interest, that'd be great. That was like, because I kept hitting M, like instinctively, like wanting to see the map.
You do. For sure. Yeah, no, I feel that big time. And the Patui stuff, I don't know what it stands for, but I know what it means.
It's first time user experience.
Yeah. That definitely be improved in spring, and then it'll be something that, so we have a major spring update, we have a major summer update, and then we have more major updates coming. We haven't put out the roadmap yet, so I'm not going to like speak to it too much, but we have, you know, these handful of major updates coming this year. The spring one's the first one. This is going to bring player mail, the auction house. It's going to bring the mastery system, which is this really, really cool. I'm very excited about it. It is this like fusion between the alternate advancement system that EverQuest had and something similar to the WoW talent system. And it's this really cool fusion of the two. And it's designed to kind of give you a ton of expression with your class. It's introducing essentially kind of you know, your warrior, for example, will be able to be a tank or a DPS or a hybrid of the two, whereas your paladin would be a tank and then a healer as its alternate kind of secondary branch. Every class will have two very distinct roles and very distinct expressions of how they fill that role. So it's a huge step forward for kind of our character progression. There's going to be tons of there's going to be a lot of UI improvements, a lot of, the classes even just in and of themselves being developed further. And there is going to be a really strong step forward towards that first player experience and a lot of the verisimilitude and kind of the lived-in feel of the world is going to be big. We're going to be updating like our quest system more fully in the summer.
Okay.
And that will also come with, some updated kind of like reward paradigms where we don't want players like leveling predominantly on just like quest grinding and quest progression hub grinding, but we do want quests when you do them to feel significant, like in terms of like an experience reward, itemization reward. There's a lot of itemization changes coming. There's a lot of like visual updates coming. It's huge. I mean, it's a massive update. It's going to be the first time the game is going to really feel like it's in its true 1.0 shape. And then it's about just from there, just kind of building out and turning out the content and continuing to kind of dial in that kind of balance between don't want to handhold, we want to orient. We don't want to handhold, but we want to like give players a sense of what they're doing, where they are, who they are. And that'll continue throughout. So like a great example is I don't think you need a quest, for example, to go. I'm thinking of a lot of WoW quests where you go to the next town, get a bunch of quests. Some of the quests are for the dungeon that you need to do. You go and you do the dungeon, you come back and turn the quest. What I'm more interested in is like when you hear about, and maybe there's a quest or something that kind of sends you towards that direction, but when you're there, you have things that are dropping that start quests. You have things you can interact with in the dungeon that like kind of, all of a sudden blow open like the idea of what this place is. And it's not just through this big wall of text, but it's like, through these dynamic moments and events where you're just able to interact with your environment. And I think I'm excited about our game. Very much so.
I think right now, from what people have told me, I mean, there's been significant improvements since the start of early access. And from what you're describing this year, it seems like you have some pretty big plans for the continued evolution and, forging forward to the 1.0 launch. And are we still like are we a year away from 1.0? Are we still years potentially away from 1.0? And believe me, I hate when developers give dates. I do. Like, I wish Steven would never give freaking dates because, sometimes stuff happens. Stuff needs to be reiterated. Sometimes the system doesn't work out. Sometimes you need to go back in and finagle and make sure that stuff is up to the snuff and polish and to the degree that the developers want, like the quality terms. But, like I said, Pantheon has been in development for almost 12 years at this point. So like, are we close to 1.0 or are we still like towards the horizon kind of thing?
I mean, the reality is that I don't even want to say anything about that. Okay. And the reason is because like I've tended to be very loose-lipped in the past because I enjoy talking to people about, what we're at, what we're doing. We are trying to be very careful about setting expectations.
Good.
And so I can't even say anything about it. I wish I could. Hopefully we will be able to say something more definitive reasonably soon. But the only thing that I have said that I feel comfortable saying is we do have an internal date. So it's not like we just have no idea. We do have an internal goal. And I would say that it is not as far off as people might think that it is.
Okay.
And that's the only thing that I feel comfortable to say. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, because from just what you described to me, it seems like there's going to be basically quarterly updates. Like we're going to have a big update in spring, big update in summer, probably a big update in fall. Which is great. You know what I mean? Like, I can't wait to what the game looks like, heck, by October or November this year. I think that'll be awesome. Oh, yeah. Then I can probably play the monk again and see how that is, but when it comes to Pantheon, is it just going to be a box cost? Is it subscription? Like what's the, 1.0, like whenever it does launch, like how much is it going to cost to play?
We are leaning towards a prescription. We're leaning towards a subscription model. We haven't set a price for that yet.
Okay.
But that's where we're leaning. It's not 100%. Okay. That is, I would say, where we're leaning.
Box cost too? Like box cost plus the subscription or just a subscription?
Yeah. Box cost plus subscription. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I don't mind that model. Like I actually think that's a pretty standard model. And are y'all going to be doing like expansions free, or you're going to pay for the expansions too?
Um,
I know it's probably like a very, very future question.
yeah.
But
Yeah. I mean, the way that we've kind of batted it around internally when we've discussed it is that it's possible that major expansions would be like paid expansions, but there will likely be, and this is subject to change. I mean, I probably should like predicate all these things with these
huge
statements are
caveat,
subject to
guys.
change. Huge caveat. But they're smaller form updates, smaller form little expansions to things are things that we might roll out just as part of the development cycle post launch. But for sure, major expansions would be paid. Yeah.
Okay, and then of course, like no pay to win, no pay to.
Oh my gosh, yeah, no pay to win. Absolutely not.
Okay.
It's possible that we might have certain a certain like I don't know what our plans are for anything like a store, like an adjacent store to the game with things like cosmetics. We want to be really, really careful with that. I mean, being as an old school game, like spirited game, we want to protect like the value and the identity of items within the game, but we're not necessarily opposed to having things like cosmetics and various things, especially because we do plan to have a housing system, we do plan to have boats, and these things are being very customizable. But yeah, we just haven't put a ton of like really solid information about that out yet. But what I can say for sure, because it will be, as long as I'm here and as long as I've only said this about one other thing, we will never ever ever have flying mounts in Pantheon, because I think it is ultimately the death knell of exploration. We will have gliding and gliders. We will have we have our climbing system. We have a lot of travel systems and things like that. But we're never gonna have flying mounts. We'll have underwater mounts, we'll have land mounts, but not flying. And the only other thing I'm going to say is we will never have pay-to-win mechanics in this game. Never, ever.
Sweet. And again, I really appreciate that, because I think flying is like, once you'll never go back. Like and we learned that in BC. You know what I mean? I'm actually playing the Burning Crusade right now.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, it's just one of those things that as soon as you add that, it just invalidates the entire world at that point. Flying is extremely powerful. But gliding, I love. Like I think limited flying, or like the capacity not to just hover, float, and go over things is just too OP. But if you have like a limited glider that is slow, or you can just like bypass for a period of time, and then you have to like use another glider, and it's like an economy cost and like an item sink, that's totally fine. I think that's pretty good. So that's really awesome that you're doing that. Joppa, dude, that's really all the questions I got. I mean, this was not your probably typical super nerdy system driven interview, but from someone who hasn't really followed the project, I really appreciate your insightfulness into the project and just being open to discuss just MMOs with me and just like the project,
Oh, yeah.
So it's been really awesome, because like I've been trying to learn a lot ever since Ash's downfall. I've been trying to learn a lot about all the current projects that are out in development right now, and there's so many of them. And Pantheon being there, and I just wanted to learn more about it, and I am excited about it. Like I said, a lot of the Ashes content creators have played Pantheon. My buddy Roar plays it. We're gonna get Richie to play it. We're all gonna play it together. I thought it was gonna be pretty fun.
That's sick.
We're gonna do that for the spring update. So
That's sick.
it should be interesting.
Yeah. Well, thank you, man. Because what's been really cool. What happened with Ashes? I mean, I have some friends that worked at Intrepid, and there's the whole personal aspect of it. I understand to a degree what so many are going through, because you put tons of time into following a game, playing the game, you support it, you defend it, you kind of have this like there's so many people in the Pantheon community that are at the same level of like they are invested in seeing this game come to fruition. And so to see you guys go through that, and then to be able to watch this very earnest search of like, you really want to find a game to play. You really want to find a load-bearing game that you can put your time into, that you can invest yourself into. And I mean, I have just a lot of respect and a lot of like empathy for that search, because it's a big friggin' deal. Like, these games mean a lot to us. And so Yeah, I appreciate your honesty and your candor and like your genuine, you know, not, I mean, it's a great interview when you can talk very, very really, very honestly about these things I like, these things I don't like. You know, this is a little bit, you know, kind of like, how are you guys going to navigate this? And a lot of people don't find this particular thing very popular or that. So it's been really cool to see that. I love these conversations. And man, like, just know I'll be watching, you know, as you play and as you guys have these experiences, because they're good for me too. I mean, I like hearing these perspectives that aren't like immediately just all in, you know, with
Right.
kind of the old school spirit pursuit. So I love it. It's been great.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the fact that you stream, and the fact that you stream like pretty regularly every week. People can find you, ask you questions. I think that's really important for just overall availability, and just like, especially right now, like just to ask questions about the game and just to see like where the current statuses are. Like, hey, do y'all have this in your game? Because I feel like right now the climate in the genre right now is horrible.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people are, and it's not just an Ashes thing. It's just like I've just seen in general, like people feel like vagabonds, just roaming the desert, wanting water really bad.
Yeah.
And it's just terrible. Like it's not a good, you know, because I think a lot of the mainstay MMOs, they know they're out there, but they don't want them. They want something else, something new, something fresh. And you know, it's just we've all been waiting for that thing to release, right? And I know with you guys, like you can't just prematurely release, you know, like at that sense, because y'all put so much work and time into this development cycle, like polish, refinement, content needs to be there, you know, it's go time, you know, not just for you guys, but for any developer currently making an MMO, it's go time, because right now there is a very hungry audience, and you know, they want a home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Joppa, thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate it. Thank you
too,
thank
man. You too, my friend. Thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed it. Take care.
All right, man. All right. You too, brother. Thank you. Bye-bye.
See ya. Well, guys, there it is. That was really cool. I hope the audio was decent. I still need to kind of improve a couple things on my end with that stuff, but hopefully it was at least clear enough. The audio and various things that audio tends to be about. Anyway, very cool, guys. That was awesome. I'm very, you know, it's fun as a developer to be able to do things like that. And what you may not realize is it's like an honor to be able to do things like that. You know, like it's an honor to be in a position to meet people, like meet real people that really care about finding a game and loving a game. And it's just an honor to be able to have those kind of conversations. And you know, of course, my hope is to represent Pantheon well, and it's about remembering in these moments that, you know, again, it's you're not, no game is going to be the game for everybody, and there's definitely a lot of things about Pantheon that depending on the person, you know, they may not resonate with. And you know, my hope is that it's about, you know, what are those things that are more of a it's coming but it's not yet kind of thing. So when we talk about, you know, the new player experience or kind of smoothing a lot of that out, those are things that I can confidently say, yeah, like I get that is going to improve big time. You know, that's something that you should feel safe, like really locking into Pantheon as your game, if you feel like it might be, knowing that those things are going to improve and you'll be able to be a part of them improving and watch them improve. But then there are other things that are like, you know, we're going to have a death penalty. Like, it just is what it is. That's something that, you know, we're not going to change, because fundamentally, like, that is part of the DNA. You know, we, no matter how we evolve and how we, you know, reach and stretch and whatnot, as we're implementing everything and bringing this game to fruition, there are certain things that are kind of, they're just non-negotiables. For what they do, for what they bring to the experience. And that's one of them, you know? And so great conversation. I think I mentioned this on last stream. Like I hope to be able to do this more. There are, you know, a lot of people that are looking for a game, and I want them to feel like there's an accessibility here to kind of get to know Pantheon, get to know me, get to know our team, you know, by extension. And so I hope to get to do this more, for sure. Sorry I didn't get to interact with chat as much. I kind of wanted to give him my full attention, so I'm not sure if I missed any juicy questions. If I did, you guys can, you know, maybe hold them to next time, because I'll be streaming tomorrow. We'll be back, you know, tomorrow normal time, but and we can talk more about it then. But yeah, flourishing Datamock, Sir PH, thank you guys so much for the subs. It is much appreciated. I'm probably not going to go much longer, guys. I'm feeling a little sleepy. It's been a long day, and I'm probably going to get a few. We got some cool stuff to look at tomorrow, though. I will say that. Summer's getting really close, you know, to being ready to see the light of day. So there's some cool stuff we'll be able to check in on tomorrow with the Summoner, and I'm sure we'll have another rousing yap session as well. And then we'll see if we can. We'll see if we can keep pushing on our cleric a little bit more. Definitely jonesing to get some more playtime. That was really fun. It was really fun. Yesterday, doing Mad Run. I really enjoyed that. It was hard to stop. It was. Just check in. Let's see. Yeah, I know. We need to do BRK soon. Hopefully, we'll be close to doing that. Cool. Guys, thank you so much. You know, super short notice. Like, didn't really do any kind of like lead up to this. So it was really cool to see all of you come out. I hope it was, like I said, I hope it was an enjoyable interview for you guys. It definitely felt very insightful for me. Excited to keep kind of checking in with more of the Ashes community as they're on the look. So anyway, guys, I'm going to call it a night. Have a great rest of your waking time, and I will see you back here tomorrow around the normal time. Dayhawk really wants me to read his comment. Uh-oh. Hold on. Hold on, Dayhawk. I got you. Did you know that the cast of Friends once got stranded at sea when their boat broke down? Luckily, no one panicked because Lisa could row. Thank you, Dayhawk. That right there, that's a note to end on right there. Wow. Wow. Anyway, guys, no outro tonight. I'm just going to shut it off. When I shut it off, it'll be off. But again, my friends, thank you so much. Thanks for being here. I will look forward to seeing you tomorrow, hopefully. And until then, have an awesome rest of your waking time. Take care. And onward and upward we go. Adios.